The man on the bicycle wore a gas mask. He was not expecting gas. He had hay fever. The mask kept the pollen out, and he did not care how that looked. His bicycle chain slipped off every 32 revolutions. He counted the revolutions instead of repairing them. At the tea hut, he chained his enamel mug to a radiator. People stole mugs, and he had a system for that too. His name was Alan Turing. He was 27. Out in the Atlantic that morning, a merchant ship was burning. Britain lived on what ships brought in. The orders sinking those ships traveled through a machine nobody could read. It was called Enigma. Turing had a cottage, a small team, and no promise that any of it was possible. 3 other people belong in this story. Joan Clark was reading mathematics at Cambridge, where women were not awarded degrees. Harry Hinsley was 20 years old and studying history. Jean Valentine was 15, in Perth, and 4 feet 10 inches tall. All of them would end up inside the same secret. What happened in that place is now thought to have cut 2 years off the war. 2 years of industrial killing that never took place. The arithmetic on that comes out somewhere near 14 million people. 13 years later, the same government took his clearance and started injecting him. Turing ate an apple every night before he slept. That is the last thing anyone remembers about him. Bletchley Park sat 50 miles northwest of London, on the railway between Oxford and Cambridge. The government bought the estate in 1938 and told nobody why. It was a Victorian house that a codebreaker later described as monstrous. In September 1939, it held about 200 people. By January 1945, it held nearly 9,000. 3/4 of them were women. Turing arrived on the 4th of September, the day after Britain declared war. He was given Cottage 3 and the Naval problem, which everyone agreed was the worst one. Here is what he was up against. Enigma scrambled every letter through rotating wheels and a plugboard. The wheels moved after every single keystroke. Press A twice, and you got 2 different letters. The German operators set it fresh at midnight. Every midnight, across every network. The number of possible daily settings ran to roughly 159 million. German cryptographic authorities had tested it and pronounced it secure. On the mathematics alone, they were right. The British could hear every message and understand none of them. Wireless operators along the coast copied the traffic down letter by letter. Motorcycle dispatch riders carried the sheets to Buckinghamshire through the blackout. Thousands of messages arrived every day and died in a filing tray. Every midnight, the German settings changed and the whole problem reset to 0. 24 hours was the entire natural life of a solution. Solve it at noon, and you had half a day of sight before the dark came back. Meanwhile, the U-boats were sinking Britain faster than the shipyards could replace it. Britain imported over half its food and nearly all its oil. Cut the sea lanes and the country starves without a single German soldier landing. Churchill later admitted the U-boats were the only thing that ever really frightened him. Turing was not asked to win the war. He was asked to read the mail. Nobody at Bletchley knew whether that was a mathematics problem or a fantasy. The trap was already set, and the country was standing in it. Before Turing, breaking Enigma meant guessing the settings. Guessing was hopeless, and everyone knew it. Turing looked at the problem and moved it somewhere else entirely. His decision was to stop attacking the machine and start attacking the people using it. His reasoning was simple. Machines are perfect and operators are not. German operators were disciplined, tired, and utterly predictable. The weather station at 6 every morning opened with the same word. Units signed off with the same phrases. Some lazy clerks typed their girlfriend's name as the message key. Bletchley called a guessable fragment of plaintext a crib. Turing's risk was severe. If the Germans ever tightened their procedure, every method built on habit would collapse overnight. He built it anyway, because habit was the only crack in the machine. The result was a design nobody had attempted before. Enigma had one flaw its designers thought was a feature. No letter could ever encipher as itself. A never came out as A. That single rule lets Turing eliminate wrong settings instead of hunting for right ones. Line up a crib against the ciphertext and look for a collision. Find one, and that whole position is dead. Kill enough positions, and only the truth is left standing. He needed a machine to do the killing at speed. He drew it, on paper, in a cottage. In the first weeks of the war, the design had no memory and ran no program. It did one thing very fast and never got bored. It was not a computer, and the man drawing it was already thinking about one. What he could not know was that 3 men in Poland had been there before him. In the last week of July 1939, British and French officers traveled to Warsaw. Cars took them south of the city into the Pyry forest to a bunker in the trees. They had been told the Poles had something to show them. Nobody expected more than a courtesy meeting. Marian Rejewski had broken Enigma's internal wiring in December 1932. He was 27 when he did it, working with permutation theory and a French spy's stolen documents. Jerzy Ricky and Henryk Zagalski built the methods out around him. By 1938, they had a machine of their own, the Bombe cryptologiczna. Then Germany added rotors, added plugboard leads, and added them faster than Poland could fund the answer. The Poles were not beaten by mathematics, they were beaten by budget. So in that forest, they handed everything over. Replica Enigma machines. Their methods. Their sheets. Everything. Dilly Knox had worked on Enigma for years without ever getting that far. 5 weeks later, the Wehrmacht crossed the Polish border. 2 of those 3 mathematicians would not survive the war intact. Ricky drowned in 1942 when his ship went down in the Mediterranean. Rejewski spent the rest of the war in France and England on lesser work. Nobody ever told him what Bletchley had built on his foundation. Britain did not acknowledge the Polish contribution publicly for over 30 years. Turing now had a head start measured in years. He also had a deadline nobody had written down. The machine came off a factory floor in Letchworth, 35 kilometers away. Harold Keen turned Turing's mathematics into iron. It stood over 6 feet tall and weighed a ton. The front carried more than 100 rotating drums, each one a mechanical enigma. They called the first one Victory, which was optimistic, and it started work in March 1940. It was loud enough that the wrens who ran it went partly deaf on long shifts. The back panels ran hot enough to blister skin. The whole hut smelled of oil and scorched insulation. Victory worked, and it worked badly. The machine kept halting on false answers, hundreds of them, hour after hour. Then Gordon Welchman brought Turing a diagram. Welchman's idea exploited a fact about the plugboard nobody had used. If G is plugged to R, then R is plugged to G. The wiring ran both ways, and that reciprocity could be fed back into the machine. Welchman wrote later that Turing was incredulous at first. Then Turing studied the diagram and got as excited as Welchman was. They called the addition the diagonal board. It cut the false stops down to something a human shift could handle. The second machine carried it and came on stream in August 1940. Someone christened her Agnes Day, and the wrens shortened it to Aggie. By 1945, there were 211 bombs running across Bletchley and its outstations. 1,676 women operated them around the clock in 8-hour watches. A wren's shift ran 8 hours, and she was never told what her machine was for. She plugged in the menu she was handed and watched the drums. When they stopped, she wrote the position down. Then she carried the paper to a door she was not allowed through. One of them was Jean Valentine, who had joined the wrens at 18 in a temper. The Air Force had rejected her as a driver because she was too small to handle a lorry. At Bletchley, she was too small to reach the top drums. So they built her a wooden footstool and stood her on it. Valentine described the job plainly. decades afterwards. She said she looked after a machine that was absolutely essential. She was not told what it did. Almost nobody was told what it did. By the spring of 1941, Bletchley was reading German Air Force traffic within hours. Turing had done the thing everyone said could not be done, and that was where the real problem started. Reading the messages was the easy half. Here is the thing nobody prepares you for. If you act on what you read, they will know you read it. Sink the convoy raider that Enigma warned you about, and the Germans ask how you found it. Ask that question twice, and they change the system. Change the system, and Bletchley goes blind, possibly for years. So Ultra came with a rule, and the rule was absolute. Never act on a decrypt without a second, visible source the enemy could believe in. Send a reconnaissance aircraft over the convoy first, in daylight, where the Germans can see it. Let them conclude they were spotted from the air. Then, and only then, attack. The aircraft was theater, and the theater cost fuel, and sometimes it cost the aircrew. Every one of those flights was a small bill paid to protect a larger secret. Some bills were not small. There was a second cost, and it was quieter. Ultra had to be kept from the people actually fighting the war. A convoy commodore was never told why his route changed at 2 in the morning. A bomber crew was never told why the target had moved. 9,000 people in Buckinghamshire knew, and the men doing the dying did not. From 1941, the question at Bletchley stopped being, can we read it? The question became, what are we allowed to do with what we know? That question had no mathematics in it at all. Men in rooms decided it. The people they decided about, never learned their names, had come up. And it would follow Turing out of the war and into a courtroom. On the 11th of November 1940, a decrypt landed on a desk in London. It described a German operation codenamed Moonlight Sonata. Something very large was coming. The decision facing the air staff was where to put the defenses. Their reasoning came from the code name itself. Moonlight meant a full moon, and the next full moon fell on the 15th. The decrypt listed 4 target numbers and decoded none of them. A captured map pointed towards London and the southeast. A German prisoner, talking to a planted cellmate, said Coventry and Birmingham. The risk was straightforward and terrible. Guess wrong and an undefended city burns. They guessed London. On the night of the 14th, 500 bombers went to Coventry. The raid lasted 11 hours. 568 people died. The medieval cathedral burned down to its shell and its columns. 34 years later, a book claimed Churchill had known and let it happen. That version spread because it is a better story. The documents do not support it. Bletchley had the operation and not the target. The one warning that named Coventry came from a prisoner nobody could verify. But strip the myth away and something harder is standing underneath it. The dilemma in that story was real, and it recurred for 5 years in every theater. Ultra was worth more than any single convoy, town, or ship it could have saved. Men sat in rooms and did arithmetic, and then went home. Turing was not in those rooms. He was in Hut 8, and Hut 8 was losing. In the summer of 1940, Turing expected Britain to lose. He took his savings out of the bank and bought 2 bars of silver. He loaded them into a pram and wheeled them into woods near Shenley Brook End. Then he buried them and wrote himself an enciphered map. After the war, he went back with a homemade metal detector and dug for 2 days. He never found them. They are still out there, somewhere under Buckinghamshire. That was the man the Atlantic was now relying on. Naval Enigma was a different animal. The Kriegsmarine had better discipline, better procedure, and 8 rotors instead of 5. Turing built a hand method called banburismus to cut down the work before the bombs ran. It used long punched sheets printed in the town of Banbury, and it was fiendish. Only a handful of people in the world could do it well. One of them was Joan Clark. Clark had taken a double first at Cambridge and been refused the degree because she was a woman. Bletchley put her in a clerical pool. Within months, she was in Hut 8, the only woman there doing cryptanalysis. The civil service had no grade for what she was, so it promoted her to linguist. Clark enjoyed filling in the form. Grade, linguist, languages, none. She spoke no second language and was paid £2 a week. In 1941, Turing proposed to her, and she accepted. He told her he was homosexual and expected that to end it. It did not, and the engagement ran on for months before they ended it together, as friends. She stayed in Hut 8 longer than anyone else. By 1944, she was running it as deputy head. Even so, the mathematics was not enough on its own. Naval Enigma needed something stolen. Harry Hinsley, the undergraduate, had been put on German naval traffic analysis. His decision came from a pattern in the intercepts. German weather ships sat alone in the Arctic for weeks, unescorted, and they carried Enigma. His reasoning was that nobody would suspect a trawler of losing the war. The risk was that a captured ship transmitted a warning and the whole cipher changed. Hinsley was 22 years old and had to argue it past the Admiralty. They took the München in May 1941 and the Lauenburg in June. Days earlier, the destroyer Bulldog had boarded U-110 as she wallowed and did not sink. A 20-year-old sub-lieutenant went down to her and came back with the machine and the books. From that summer, Hut 8 read the U-boat traffic and the convoys began steering around the wolf packs. Sinkings fell from 280,000 tons a month to 62,000. Turing, Welchman, and two colleagues wrote directly to Churchill in October 1941 over everyone's head, begging for staff. Churchill's answer went back the same day. Action this day. Bletchley got what it asked for, and it got it fast. For 7 months, the Atlantic belonged to the codebreakers. Then, on the 1st of February 1942, every U-boat in the Atlantic went silent. The Germans had added a fourth rotor. They called the new network Triton. Bletchley called it Shark. Here is the part that should be unbearable. Nitz had not suspected a thing. He added the rotor on general principle because his signal staff advised it. The single most damaging change of the entire cipher war was routine housekeeping. One extra wheel multiplied the problem by 26. The 3-rotor bombs would now need 18 days to do what took them a day before. The war did not have 18 days to spare. Worse, the Germans changed the weather code book a month earlier. The cribs were gone. Hut 8 had no way in. There was no crib left to guess with and no machine fast enough to force it. The blackout ran for 10 months. The wolf packs came back to mid-ocean where no aircraft could reach. 43 ships went down in August and September alone. Across 1942, the U-boats averaged around 650,000 tons a month. Every one of those tons was flour, or fuel, or men in the water in the dark. Roughly 30,000 British merchant seamen died in the course of the war. Most of them were civilians. They had signed on to carry cargo. In Hut 8, they worked the problem anyway, in shifts, for 10 months, on nothing. Clark was there. Turing was there. Hugh Alexander was running the hut by then. In November, the Admiralty sent Bletchley a memorandum. It asked the codebreakers to pay a little more attention to Shark. It noted that the Atlantic was the one place where Bletchley was achieving nothing. Turing read that while the men who wrote it were losing 3 ships a day, there was no mathematical route in. The only way back inside was to take the books off a German submarine, which meant someone had to go into one that was sinking. 30 miles off Port Said, on the 30th of October 1942, a hunt ended. Spitard has been dropping depth charges for 10 hours. U-559 comes up broken. Her crew abandons her and they leave the seacocks open. She will go down in minutes and take everything inside her with her. 3 men go over the side of the destroyer and swim to her. Lieutenant Tony Fasson, 29. Able Seaman Colin Grazier, 22. Tommy Brown, the canteen assistant, who is 16 and has lied about his age to be here. Fasson goes down the conning tower first, into the dark. The water is already at his knees and it is climbing. He kicks in a locked cabinet with his boots. Grazier passes the books up to Brown, hand to hand, in the black. Brown climbs the ladder, hands them out, and goes back down. He does this 3 times. They work like this for 90 minutes. Then the sea takes her, fast, all at once. Brown is on the ladder, and the pressure blows him clear of the tower. Fasson and Grazier are still below. They never came up. Their bodies were not recovered. What they had handed out was the short weather code book and the short signal book. The paper reached Bletchley Park on the 24th of November. The codebreakers understood what they had within a day. U-boats sent their weather reports with the 4th rotor parked in neutral. In that position, the 4-rotor machine was pretending to be a 3-rotor machine. The old bombs could break it. On the 13th of December 1942, Hut 8 sent the Admiralty the positions of over 12 Atlantic U-boats. Fasson and Grazier received the George Cross. Brown received the George Medal, and the Navy discovered his real age and sent him home. He died in a house fire in 1945, aged 18, going back inside for his sister. 3 men, 90 minutes, 2 years off a world war. None of them ever knew what the books were for. Start with the people, because the tonnage is easier and it means less. Between December 1942 and January 1943, rerouting saved perhaps 750,000 tons of shipping. Behind that number are crews who docked and wrote home and were not written about. In North Africa, Ultra put the Royal Navy on top of the tankers crossing to Tripoli. Rommel ran dry in front of Montgomery, partly because somebody in Buckinghamshire read a fuel manifest. Ultra told Montgomery what Rommel had left in the tank before Alamein. It let the Allies read the German response to the Sicily deception and confirm they had swallowed it. Before Normandy, it showed the Allies where the German divisions actually were. Eisenhower called Ultra decisive. Bletchley Park broke something close to 2.5 million messages before it was over. Now the part that is honestly uncertain, and you should know which part that is. Remember Harry Hinsley, the undergraduate who sent men after weather trawlers. He became the official historian of British intelligence. He spent decades inside the files, and then he put a number on it. Ultra, he wrote, shortened the war by not less than 2 years and probably by 4 years. That is the estimate everything else is built on. The rest is arithmetic, and the arithmetic is blunt. The Second World War killed somewhere between 50 and 85 million people in 6 years. Take the low end of Hinsley's figure and run it forward 2 more years. You get a range of roughly 14 to 21 million additional dead. 14 million is the bottom of that range, and it is the number that stuck. It is not a body count. Nobody counted the people who did not die. It is an estimate, built on an estimate, by a man who was in the room. And it is the most defensible thing anyone has managed to say about what that hut was worth. There is one more thing the number cannot hold. Every month the war ran was a month the camps ran. Ending it 2 years early ended that 2 years early as well. Turing did not do it alone, and he never claimed he had. But the road runs back through his design. There is no version of this story where it does not. In 1945, they were told to go home and never speak of it. Not for a year, not for a decade. Never. The machines were broken up and the drawings were burned. Britain was quietly selling captured Enigmas to other governments and letting them believe the cipher was safe. So the secret was held for 30 years. John Valentine said nothing until the mid-1970s when the first books appeared. She had a husband and 2 children by then, and none of them knew. Thousands of women went home to families who assumed they had been filing paperwork. Some were told they had a soft war, and they let it stand, because they had to. Joan Clark stayed in the work at GCCQ until 1977. Gordon Welchman finally wrote his account of Hut 6 and published it in 1982. The American government withdrew his clearance and forbade him to discuss his own war. He died 3 years later, still under restriction, for writing down what he had done. Turing was appointed Obbe in 1946. The citation could say nothing, because the reason for it did not officially exist. He went to the National Physical Laboratory and designed a stored program computer. He went to Manchester and helped build one of the first machines that ran on software. In 1950, he asked, in print, whether a machine could think. He proposed a test for it, and we are still arguing about that test today. The SCU consultancy continued because the state still wanted his mind. He was 39, productive, and entirely unknown. And then he reported a burglary. In January 1952, someone broke into Turing's house in Wilmslow. He went to the police, as anyone would. During questioning, the officers worked out that the burglar was known to a man Turing was sleeping with. Turing told them the truth about the relationship. In full, unprompted, he did not think he had done anything wrong. Under the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885, he had committed 6 offenses. It was the same statute that had been used on Oscar Wilde 7 years earlier. He asked a police officer whether there was a commission sitting to legalize it. There was not. It stayed illegal in Britain until 1967. On the 31st of March 1952, at Knutsford Quarter Sessions, Turing pleaded guilty. His counsel asked the court not to take him away from important work. The decision was probation for 12 months, on one condition. Medical opinion of the age held that his sexuality was an illness and that hormones would cure it. Risk in that courtroom meant risk to Turing's career and nothing else. The result was an order to submit for treatment at Manchester Royal Infirmary. His alternative was prison. Arnold Murray walked out of the building. The 19-year-old was not the one the state wanted to fix. They injected him with synthetic estrogen for a year. Turing wrote to a friend that he was obliged to take this organotherapy. It made him impotent, and it grew breast tissue on a man who ran marathons at near Olympic times. GQ took his security clearance. The Cold War was on, and a convicted homosexual was now classified as a blackmail risk. He had spent 6 years being the most trusted man in the building. Now the state's own logic made him a hazard to itself. He could not tell the court what he had done in the war. Nobody in that courtroom was cleared to hear it. The judge did not know, his counsel did not know, the Manchester press did not know. He stood there as a 39-year-old Don with a conviction. Manchester University kept him on. His colleagues did not shun him, and his work carried on. The state was the only thing that could not forgive him. The treatment ended in 1953. He had 14 months left. On the 8th of June 1954, his housekeeper let herself into the house. Eliza Clayton found him upstairs. He had died the previous day, 2 weeks short of 42. The post-mortem found cyanide. The inquest sat and returned suicide. His mother never accepted it, and she had a reason. Turing kept a gold plating experiment in the spare room with potassium cyanide wired into the light socket. Jack Copeland has argued the inquest would not survive a modern coroner. No note, no sign of despair. A to-do list left on his desk for Tuesday. He had booked a holiday. The distribution of the poison in his organs fits inhaled fumes better than a swallowed dose. The police never tested the apple. Nobody can now say with certainty which it was. What is certain is what the state had already taken while he was alive. He was never charged with anything touching his work. No document has ever suggested he leaked a single word. The state removed him based on a category, not on evidence. It took 32 years for his name to be attached to the work in public. It took 55 for an apology. In September 2009, the Prime Minister apologized for the appalling way he was treated. 4 years later, the Queen granted a posthumous pardon. In 2017, Parliament pardoned every man convicted under those laws and called it the Alan Turing Law. Since 2021, he has been on the £50 note issued on his birthday. A country can do all of that, and it changes nothing about 1954. For 30 years, the state kept his name out of this story. The only reason you know it tonight is that people refuse to stop saying it. So, say it. Like this film, send it to someone who has never heard it, and subscribe to the channel. Every one of those is a small refusal to let the silence come back. There is a house in Wilmslow with a room upstairs. On the table beside the bed, an apple, half of it eaten. Somewhere out on a Buckinghamshire lane there was a man in a gas mask on a bicycle. He never fixed the chain. He counted. 32 turns, then the small correction, then 32 more.